Welcome back to Block TV. It's time for Crypto Globe, where we take a trip around the world to hear about the latest developments in the industry. Now to guide us on the tour is Ethan Pierse, director of the Paris-based Crypto Assets Institute. Ethan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, always good to be here. Happy New Year.
All right, I see you're in Ohio, very special place, although I prefer the more romantic Paris. Now, 2020 is officially upon us, but before we let go of 2019, I'm not ready just yet. Let's take a look at some of the biggest crypto and blockchain events and developments of 2019, starting off with Libra and the CBDC.
Yeah, well, I think as we look back over kind of the things that marked this year for crypto assets and the blockchain economy in general, I think it's obvious that Libra had a massive impact on the discussions. It was always unclear as to what Libra could become. It's very unclear now as to where this could go, given all of the regulatory issues and pushback. But I think it's really obvious that before Libra, the Western governments were not talking about central bank digital currencies. They weren't really very clear on how stable coins were going to be dealt with. There's still lots of clarity to work on these things. But now we have pretty much every government, the US, most of Western Europe, all kinds of places in Southeast Asia, and even China that are now pushing some version of a future digital currency. Basically, the idea just came that lots of pushback immediately from Libra as an idea. Part of that being Facebook, and historically it's mix-ups with privacy and other things. But I think also just I think that I think the central banks, specifically the regulators, they very much understand what happens if they lose control of monetary policy and if their governments no longer are as important through their currency. And so immediate pushback creates an interesting thing, but then the discussion changed pretty quickly to from this idea that the digital currencies or a global digital currency wasn't necessary or wasn't useful to, well, actually, that's probably a really good idea, but it needs to be sovereign. So we kind of pivoted from this very quickly from this idea that it wasn't necessary or useful or good to all of a sudden, well, that's probably going to tick some good boxes, could be a good thing, but we still need to run it. And so I think Libra really jump-started that conversation. Now we have, kind of the imminent release of China's digital currency. It's already in beta, if we're to believe the reports being run on some tests with some of the banks and different things. All kinds of cool stuff there. I think if we look at where that discussion has gone, I think we're very clearly going to see over the next year to 2 years a lot of movement in the sovereign space, where different countries are going to be coming up with their own version of a sovereign digital currency, either on a national level or even just on a regional level, like we just saw in Busan and Korea with the payment system that they put in place. I think we're going to see lots of corporate-led initiatives, maybe through consortiums like Libra, whether Libra happens or not, what that specifically looks like. But we've also got Walmart out there, we've got Amazon, we've got lots of big companies that are looking to somehow go around the banking system and payments by putting that on crypto for all of its obvious benefits. But we also even see just things like apps, like we're waiting to see what happens with Telegram, and whenever they release their version of what this could look like. We already have it with Line Messenger, as we've talked about. Line has, it's the largest messaging app in Southeast Asia. It's the main one for Japan with about 90% market penetration. You can pay in app, you can pay in stores. They now have a digital banking license. They've got 2 crypto exchanges, one in Singapore and one in Tokyo. And now they've relaunched their crypto to further enable the end payment system. So in a lot of ways, that's already Libra internally inside of Line. So these things are going to continue moving forward. So we've got the sovereigns, we've got the corporates, and then obviously we've got the kind of the truly decentralized versions of this through Bitcoin. I think the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot of movement. Whether or not that happens this year, who knows? But it only was really about half of 2019 that Libra changed so much of the landscape. So I think we're looking forward to some pretty cool stuff this year and definitely over the next 2 years.
For sure. I mean, definitely Libra brought the CBDC on the map. Now, 2019 also saw mass tokenization across real estate, collectibles, IPs like movies, music, art, as well as more financial-based, securitized, tokenized securities. That 2019 it saw increased regulatory clarity, which is very important for these financial vehicles. Will 2020 bring increased investment and market adoption for STOs?
So yeah, we pretty much, you ran through the good shopping cart list there of all the ways that we could use tokenized securities, and how that I really feel like that's going to completely change the really the future of investment, and how we fund things like SMEs, and how we deal with fractional access to all kinds of these different assets, regardless of the liquidity discussion. How do we actually get into these assets by dividing them into smaller and smaller pieces? We saw great examples in real estate, dividing up apartments or entire buildings into smaller units, or real estate funds that tokenized parts of their overall fund in order to start dealing with providing fractional access and looking towards more liquidity, even if it's more of a punctual liquidity and not necessarily kind of a daily volume idea. We saw things like, magic cards get tokenized on mythic markets. We saw, we've seen all kinds of different spaces in like with movies, several, well, actually probably one or two new funds a month being launched in that space. All kinds of really cool things going on in the tokenized security space. I think a lot of that because we got a lot more clarity from the regulators on how much of that would be treated. I think that we're going to see even more of that regulatory kind of transparency, and those frameworks get put into place so that people can really scale businesses. I think a lot of the kind of the foundational bricks of this are in place in most of the West. So this year really just becomes the question is what kind of assets are we really going to see take off, and how much of the market's money is going to move in that direction to really start funding these things. How much that's going to be institutional, how much of it's going to be just dedicated to accredited investors or more, and how much of it really opens up into the retail investor space. I think that's kind of the thing for this year as to where will that all go. I don't think there's any way to really tell. I think it's just lots of people working really hard to make these things happen. Lots of amazing entrepreneurs have built really cool platforms and tools to make this work. So now it's just a question of the cycle of use and adoption, and continuing clarity in the regulatory space. And as that cycles up over the next, I'd say 18 months, we're going to see really, really cool things happen with tokenized securities.
It's definitely kind of on topic. There's often been the crypto lovers, and then the yes blockchain, no to crypto people. Do you feel that 2019 saw more growth for the blockchain, or it was a stronger year for crypto specific?
I think we saw a lot of, in the regulatory space, at least we got a lot more clarity. Lots of things that we can talk about in the next piece as well. But just with Libra's push, causing governments to kind of push back and put Libra in a box, which caused them to really kind of define more and more what they believe digital currencies to be, what are stable coins, how do we feel about securities in a tokenized way. So I do think we made huge advancements in the space on the crypto side. Obviously, talking cryptocurrencies, there was tremendous amounts of volatility, lots of money made, lots of money lost. It's still an extremely interesting year to prove many of those use cases moving forward. But what's really cool is how many of the places like China and Korea that were not crypto friendly have become much more blockchain friendly through scaling up all these different applications that we can of the blockchain, and what that created then as kind of pushing people closer and closer to crypto. So we talked about this year all kinds of really cool things. Whether it was like salmons from egg to store on a supply chain issue, whether it was e-voting, whether it was things around just general logistics. We've got certifying diplomas In India, we've got we've got all kinds of identity solutions being put into place. We've got legal tech in China and across Europe. All these things that are being in some way or another improved or advanced or innovated with the blockchain. And what that's created, we look at someplace like Korea that pushed back very hard against crypto. The current administration has been very anti-crypto in general, but has become extremely pro-blockchain. We saw the entire area around Busan, which is Korea's second largest city, become a blockchain hub, kind of a regulation-free sandbox. All kinds of really cool solutions, corporate and private and public partnerships to create really cool solutions in that space. Now that has moved forward where Busan has just launched its own regional crypto for payments. It's a bank and telecom partnership to make that happen. That's really kind of cool to see how that's moved. The opposition party, there's election cycle coming up. The opposition party is very much pro-crypto, and now we're seeing that the current administration is becoming at least crypto neutral and potentially pro-crypto piece by piece by putting legislation into place that allows us to define what digital assets and digital currencies are and how to deal with those things more and more. So I think as we see, we saw this in India, we've seen it in Turkey, all kinds of places that are, as they define use cases for the blockchain, become also more crypto neutral, and then that starts to shift towards crypto friendly. Let's see exactly how far that goes, but I do think this was the year of, in a lot of ways, for crypto, for regulatory kind of clarity and compliance to be laid out there as a very important piece. Blockchain, pure blockchain solutions, really scaling up. Now we see how does all that start to marry in 2020 and 21 for us to scale crypto solutions, crypto assets adoption, tokenized securities, non-fungible tokens, all kinds of really cool things that we're just seeing more and more things around. So it's really fun to see. I think we're just going to see more and more scale through both of those. It's going to be, the year passed really fast, and a lot of stuff happened even starting in mid-year. So I think 2020 is going to be full of surprises.
Mm-hmm. And you touched a bunch on regulation there. I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts on the FATF's crypto guidelines in 5 AMD and its effects for 2020 in crypto?
So, the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, is around 30 years old. It really stepped in and kind of increased even more its importance after 9/11. And then this year, mid-year, released its crypto guidelines, which are around money laundering, and specifically, we're very clear about how we need to be controlling how money gets into the crypto system, how money gets out of the crypto system, and how we're able to understand who those people are. So, how much money can you keep in a, for example, a prepaid type of credit card that's funded by wallet, by crypto, or whatever kind of thing there might be. How we actually deal with identifying people through KYC and AML that are dealing with crypto-powered startups, even if it's not necessarily a cryptocurrency per se, but games or other kinds of things. And so kind of laid out some more frameworks just of really understanding, okay, here's how we need to deal with people and crypto so that as it starts to travel around the world, whether the people are moving or the money is moving, we're able to kind of deal with that. And that had really huge repercussions in the regulatory space. Most significantly, I think we're now seeing the 5th anti-money laundering directive of the EU taking effect now. And that has already caused startups to start to close up shop that don't want to impose KYC and AML on the users of their platforms. But I think that's going to be really good in a lot of ways to clean up a lot of the vagueness or kind of unclear gray stuff that was going on. I do think it's going to penalize projects that are dealing with very small amounts of crypto, whether it's microtransactions or, again, some of the gaming space or other things where people are just wanting to be a part of certain things that happen to be crypto powered. I think that could create some stress in the onboarding or in the usage of those platforms. But otherwise, I don't think this is going to change people who are dealing with, whether it's day trading or they're purchasing specific assets. If we talk about the tokenized securities space, I think that the level of AML that was already going to be imposed, we were already pushing for the correct levels of KYC and anti-money laundering to be a part of those things. So a lot of that has just been pieces, kind of influencing others. So we've got obviously the SEC is trying to figure out a lot of this stuff, but then the FATF has really made places like Thailand and Korea get very clear about how they want this to be done. Turkey, all across Europe. We've now got in France and Germany new laws in place that make they create a lot more transparency about how governments are dealing with crypto and crypto companies. So with the PAC law in France, a lot more clear frameworks of how to raise money through some kind of a tokenized event through the ICO visa that they created. Removing value-added tax and capital gains tax from working with crypto, those kind of things over into Germany, which has now created this banking law that goes into effect now that will allow banks to hold and trade crypto on behalf of their customers. So I think that all of these things playing together have just pushed everybody to up their game. It's become very competitive, and every week there's another article saying that this country proclaims himself the crypto regulatory leader or hotspot, and I think that's really good that everybody's competing to really create the most hospitable environments possible for these businesses to scale that are creating tokenized or other crypto or digital asset solutions. See where all that goes, but I think that this is again going to be a year where all of this regulatory stuff starts to fall into place as everybody gets on board with very similar approaches, and we'll see how all that works. It's not going to be pain-free, but I think we're already seeing the fruit of the clarity that's brought and how people are creating solutions that are going to be trustable, that are going to allow corporates with their regulatory compliance issues to become more important players in the crypto space, and to allow governments to step in and also play in that, whether it's central bank digital currencies or other issues. It's all starting to mix together, and we're starting to create some really interesting solutions. I think it's going to be fun to see where the regulatory stuff goes now that everybody's getting on board. So it should be a fun year.
Yeah, Ethan, for sure. The 2019 saw major developments, especially on the regulatory side. And I'm excited personally, I know, and I'm sure our viewers are excited to see what 2020 brings. And I'm sure that you will join us throughout 2020 to bring us those news. Have fun at CES, Ethan. We look forward to seeing you there. Yeah, we look forward to having you from there. And for all our viewers at home, if you want more on cryptocurrency and blockchain news, make sure to check us out at blocktv.com.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.